going to present our author spotlight. It's a 10-minute segment where members talk about their career, their books, their whatever they want to talk about. But I can't wait to hear her because she loves coffins and graveyards and and scary things, and she would get along well with Bruce. So he's quiet. He writes horror, so yeah. Okay, well, let's hear Susan.
Can y'all hear me? Yeah. All right. So technically, I don't have a novel published yet. The first thing I got published was a short story in Caprock's anthology last year, and it is.
Can you move the podium over? That way.
Move it this way.
Yeah. You're hiding behind the thing, and it's probably shining in your eye. Just a little bit more.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
I'm a natural blonde.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
But that short story is part of book 2 in the series that I'm working on. I took part of it, squished it down, edited a bunch of stuff out, and just got it under the word count. Just barely, because I like to. I'm very verbose. I've been working on this series of novels for more time, longer than it should be necessary, because life, gets in the way. I have 2 autistic children, and I myself am neurospicy. So we tend to just kind of be like, I'm working on this, I'm focusing, and then we go, oh, squirrel. And we go focus on that for a while. So I'm hoping to get finished with book 1 before the end of next year. That's my goal. And the story is based on the biblical story of demoniacs of Gadara. Anybody not familiar with that story?
I'm not familiar with that story.
You're not familiar. Okay. So at one point, Christ, the whole calming of the storm, goes across in the boat. That's where he's going. He's going to Gadara at that point. And when he gets there, the 2 demoniacs meet him at the marina, at the dock, as soon as he steps off the boat. And the demons that possess these 2 men call themselves Legion, or they say, we are called Legion, for we are many. And so that's the base core story that the series is surrounding. Each book centers on a protagonist that plays a part in defeating Legion. And they're all female, but they're not all human. And I am sensitive, so a lot of the paranormal activity, and so is my daughter, so a lot of the paranormal activity that is in the book is based on actual experiences that we've had. Some of the demons that are in, it's particularly book 1, my daughter and I have actually seen with our own eyes. And so she's actually going to be illustrating them in the first book as police sketches. And because one of the main characters is a police detective, and his son is a sensitive, and so he gets the sketch artist to talk to his son, and his son starts describing things that he's seen. And so my daughter is drawing the demons that she's actually seen, and those will be in the book. So I had my first paranormal experience when I was 4, or at least the first one I can remember. I was 4, so I have a lot to draw from. Because I'm 51 now, that's a lot of stuff. I also draw from experiences that other family members have had and coworkers and friends, because I used to work in 2 haunted museums at the same time. They were sister museums, and so I have a lot of stuff to draw from that because a lot of my coworkers also had paranormal experiences, so they couldn't say I was a crazy one because, you know, they're also seeing the hooded figure in the Old West Gallery. So I don't have to really work very hard to come up with spooky, scary things to write about in my books. It's also history-based. They take place from, in the ancient Middle East up till present day. So that spans a lot. So that they're not going to be like this thick. I'm going to skip. So because I love history, I love ancient history, I love Greco-Roman history, I love the history of the early church. And so, the whole saints and martyrs and the Diocletian and persecutions and, all of that. So that all plays a part in the series. The series is called Legion Rising. And each book, the protagonist, the heroine, maybe you would call her, has this connection with the leader of Legion. Some of them know about that connection, some of them don't. They learn about it along the way. The first book is called The Heir, and it involves a phylactery. Do you know what a phylactery is? Anybody? A phylactery is just a little container that holds either Holy Scripture or magical spells of protection or curses or anything like that. The Jews have a phylactery on their doorpost when they're going in another house, and it has Scripture in it. And so that's what the artifact, each book has an artifact in it. Because I like old stuff. I like dead people's things. And so so she inherits this phylactery, and in the course of the book, she finds out something about herself that she didn't know. She grew up in the foster system, so she doesn't even know who her biological father is. Mental illness also runs in her family, and so I also deal with, because mental illness also runs in my family, and so I deal with the subject of different types of mental illness, and how sometimes it's, people say, oh, you're not possessed, you're just schizophrenic. Or, in the Middle Ages, you weren't crazy, you had a demon, so we're going to tie you to a chair and dunk you in a river. That's what they did to witches. But I've been writing since I was little bitty. My first work of fiction was, the first thing I ever wrote was a work of fiction. I had already developed a reputation for being a storyteller. So when I would have an experience, and I would the main one that stands out is when I was in kindergarten, I levitated in my grandmother's backyard. Something levitated me twice. In the backyard, I ran in the house, and I'm telling my mom all this happens. She's still like, telling stories.
Oh.
But I'm not, it really happened. I was like the girl who cried wolf. She didn't believe me because I was always making up these, crazy, outlandish things. So when I'm an Air Force brat. So my father got stationed at Hickam Air Force Base. So we moved there when I was 6, started first grade there. And the first assignment, the first week was we had to write about what we did over the summer. Something exciting, she said, that happened to us, or that we did over the summer. I'm like, nothing exciting happened to me. I only drove halfway across the United States and then flew on a giant airplane halfway across the Pacific Ocean. That's old hat for me at that point. And so it's like, okay, so what am I going to do? I'll make up something exciting. They say, right when you know, apparently it was very obvious that our house had never burned down. So she called my mom, and asked my mom about it. She's like, no, I just, yeah, I didn't think so. And so they both, I talked to me both separately, and you know, they were both like, you didn't think that was exciting, moving to Hawaii? And I was like, well, I've already lived in Germany. That's where I was born. I've lived in Alabama. We moved several times in Alabama, and then we were just in Minot, North Dakota back in the. No, that wasn't exciting. That was just, that's just the next move. And in 3 years, we'll do it again. You know, it's not, it's just my life. And I said, well, to the kid, a lot of the kids, that would be really exciting. So just write about that, okay? I was like, okay. And that was my first written work of fiction. So after a while, my mom began to notice that some of my tall tales had a common denominator, and that was things that she couldn't see. I did have an imaginary friend, but I knew he was an imaginary friend. His name was Jeffrey. I could describe what he looked like, everything, but he was an imaginary friend. I was very, you know, he's not real. He's a boy I've made up to hang out with, you know, somebody to play with when nobody else was around. But then there were other imaginary friends that I could tell they were there, but nobody else could. And so she began to start paying attention because her mother is an intuitive, and was. And so she was already very comfortable with premonitions and foretelling dreams and ESP type things. You know, like my grandmother would commonly, you know, often call her up and just say, "Hey, what's wrong with Susan?" And my mother would be like, "No, hey Susan, come here. What's the matter? I don't feel good. I've got a fever of 103." You know, that kind of thing. So she was used to that kind of stuff. And we're you know, Celtic and Gaelic descent, and so we're kind of superstitious just a little bit. And so there was the whole, you know, salt, knocking on wood. You didn't knock on the laminate, that's not going to work. It's got to be wood, or the fairies won't hear you. So when I started saying, I don't feel well, she'd say, what kind of don't feel well? Because I had different types that don't feel well, depending on what was in the house at the time. I just began to call them watchers. And so I would say that we lived in a little white house. It was a very old house. And when I was in kindergarten, and there was a watcher there. He stayed in the back room where my mom kept all the boxes. She knew my dad was in Korea. She knew we were going to be moving when he got back. So she didn't unpack everything. That would just be silly. You know. And so she would put the bright pumpkin orange mohair rug over the boxes, and we would climb on boxes like we were climbing a mountain. And it would sit on top of the boxes in the corner of the room and just watch me over the play. We'd have little tea parties in there, you know, we'd eat our lunch in there, and it's just like, hey, how's it going? Y'all eat here? No, that box isn't, you know. I would tell her, don't step on that box. You know, I'd say, Mama, that box, we need to move that box. She'd say, what'd you do that? And I would just say, well, I don't know. Because at that point, you know, who's going to believe? Well, the invisible man sitting at the top of there, yeah. He told me not to. So you can see why my mom was like, thought I was a big fat fibber for most of, you know, my preschool and kindergarten years. But I've always, you know, like Miss Lynn said, I've always been drawn to spooky stuff. When I was a kid, you know, bats, snakes, vultures, spiders, didn't scare me. I was the kid in the neighborhood who was picking up toads and carrying them around in her pocket. Not for very long though, because I didn't want them to die. It was actually cared about them. It wasn't just that, you know, I thought they were cool. But my mom worried when I was in kindergarten because I was coloring everything black. Black is still my favorite color. But she talked to my kindergarten teacher one day where they had a parent night, you know, where you go in and you're like, oh, here's what we've been doing. Look, we cut our shapes. We're using scissors, like they color in the lines, you know, that kind of thing. And of course, every picture I colored was black. And so she asked my kindergarten teacher, this worries me. What is there something? Should I be worried? Because she colors everything black. And my kindergarten teacher, her name was Yvonne Brenner, God bless her, what she told my mom next made my life a whole lot easier than it would have been otherwise. She says, there is absolutely nothing wrong with Susan. She is bright, she's sweet, she's kind-hearted, all the kids in the class love her, she's very smart, she just happens to color everything black. We have a boy that colors everything blue. I have a little girl who colors everything orange. She says all kids go through this phase, usually in kindergarten. They latch onto a color and everything is that color. She says we colored pictures of George Washington for President's Day, because this was sort of the end of the school year. And she said, you've never seen so many purple George Washingtons in your life. She said, so don't worry about Susan. You don't have to worry about her. She's fine. And that came over really handy, you know. Later on in 5th grade, when we had what was called meology, we started bringing psychology into this classroom. And we had to fill out a form with our favorite animal, favorite reptile, favorite bird, favorite color, favorite tree. And I'm listing black vulture as my favorite bird. And the snake is my favorite reptile. And black is my favorite color. And spider is my favorite bug. And the people, the psychologists doing the little meology thing, they consulted with the school counselor. And the school counselor called my mother. Said, we're worried about Susan. These are her answers on this little survey that we did. And my mom says, yeah, those are all the correct answers. Those are all of her favorite things. And they said, that doesn't worry you? She says, no. And I'm going to tell you exactly what her kindergarten teacher told me. And she told the psychologist, or the school counselor, exactly what Mrs. Brenner told her. There is nothing wrong with Susan. If she treats her classmates with kindness, and she shares, and she does her work, and she's respectful to the teacher, that's all I'm worried about. I couldn't care less what her favorite snake is. It's the black racer, by the way. Or it was at the time. So I take all of that, little pieces of me, and they're going in these books. So they're a little semi-autobiographical. Nate is one of the main characters, and he's 9 when the first book starts. He is sensitive, and a lot of his experiences are going to be my experiences, and my daughter's. One particular scary incident that I've read at Critique Group a while back is actually one of Sarah's experiences. And I was going to bring it and read it to you, but I forgot it, because ADHD. So some of my favorite writers, obviously, are going to be in the spooky genre. Neil Gaiman, Edgar Allan Poe, Frank Peretti, Ted Dekker are at the top of the list. Not a big Stephen King fan. Don't shoot me. Not a big Stephen King fan. I'm not a fan of his writing. I'm a fan of him, though. He is an excellent human being, and I love him. But it's just not my kind of horror. So I kind of steer clear from that particular subgenre in the horror genre. But I also love historical fiction, and so people like Elizabeth Chadwick, Sharon K. Penman, Bernard Cornwell, and Julia Marillier are some of my favorites in the historical genre. Sharon K. Penman has passed away a few years ago, so we won't be getting any new ones stories about Richard III from her, but the others are still around. And I guess that's about it.
I can see why you're a writer. You have the imagination for sure.